Hall last night in one of the biggest escapes in the history.
State Attorney's Office. They're answering questions about their operation of the church and their use of marijuana. We have a live action camera report from Newswatch reporter Richard Schlesinger. Rich?
Dwight, the church members came out of Assistant State Attorney Hank Adorno's office on the 6th floor of the Metro Justice Building here just about a half an hour ago. 3 members of the church, including the spiritual leader, Brother Love, were subpoenaed last week, and they've been there since 3 in the afternoon with the church's lawyers. The church members came out to break for dinner and said they discussed a wide variety of issues with the prosecutors. Those issues, they say, ranged from sex to marijuana use to the church's trouble with zoning laws. Adorno would only say the prosecutors are conducting a wide-ranging investigation on all complaints against the church, but Brother Love said the issue of marijuana, which his church considers a sacrament, did come up this afternoon.
The issue of the book of Genesis of the Bible was brought up and will be brought up more. We are talking about the herbs that are described on the first page of the Bible.
Do they tell you what they're investigating?
They told me they were going to ask many questions. A lot had to do with an individual. Some had to do with the faith. They say we're going to be talking a lot longer.
And talk they will. They're due back here at 6:30 after dinner, where they expect to spend another 2 hours in the state attorney's office. And they will be back again, we are told, tomorrow morning. And we, of course, will stick with it. Richard Schlesinger, Newswatch 10, reporting live from the Metro Justice Building.
Efforts continue to fly 19
of the city more than residents. City Attorney Phil Shaler has notified commissioners that there is no specific state law to prohibit a 2-tier rate system.
The marijuana smoking Coptic religious group is being investigated now by still one more law enforcement body, the Dade County State's Attorney's Office. Robin Lloyd has the story.
They came costumed in bright military-style uniforms, an outfit they call regalia. Brother Love, Jacqueline Town, and Richard Cohen, all 3 Coptic church members subpoenaed by the state attorney's office. They are being asked to answer to the hundreds of complaints authorities say they have received about the Zion Coptic Church. The principal question is the group's use of marijuana. They call it their holy sacrament. After 2.5 hours of testifying, the group emerged.
They have said that they're primarily concerned with talking to me as an individual. We have given them, we understand their authority. We're asking them to understand ours.
Can you be a little more explicit?
We understand them to be the duly appointed officers of the State Attorney of Florida, of Dade County, Florida. We expect them to understand that we are the members of a church with the full accredited rights that are accredited to any church.
The Coptic's attorneys say the state has not specifically disclosed the nature of the investigation, but Assistant State Attorney Hank Adorno says he will review the questions of the church's zoning in a residential area, their use of marijuana, and juveniles brought into the church. No charges have been filed as yet. Robin Lloyd, Channel 4 News.
Tony, a replacement for Doug Dickey.
They had to do it quickly, and they did just that. It's Clem, Channel 7 News.
The spirit of Christmas is reported to be somewhat strained at Miami International Airport. Passengers are complaining of the presence of members of the Hare Krishna sect. They're begging for money.
Like clockwork, Hare Krishna members show up at the airport to find money for their religion. A First Amendment court battle has given them rights to solicit in restricted areas, within 8 feet of these pillars in main concourse areas. If they roam into restricted areas with passenger seating, they're asked to leave for the day. Airport employees like Vernon Holloway say they constantly violate that agreement.
I've seen the people push them away. I've seen them, when they grab their lapel and stuff, they would pull their lapel and almost rip the guy's jacket off.
Others have complained to Channel 7 News that foreigners who speak little English are often talked out of their money, and others don't complain.
I would say over 75 to 80% of the people who are really harassed by these type of folks and solicitors just don't have the time to turn around to complain to my people here in the terminal.
We saw this man buttonhole a woman while stopping her for money.
No, actually, I pinned a flower on her collar and didn't even touch her skin.
Other groups like Jehovah's Witnesses solicit here, but people complain mostly about the Krishnas. Looking for response, we got a better one today than last week when Krishnas threw us off their South Dade property.
Some people may like and some people may dislike. And basically what we're trying to do is give everyone an opportunity to engage in the service of God. Sometimes people aren't so enthusiastic, so we like to try to encourage them as much as possible.
Others in the Krishna jungle on Coral Way claim complaints about their soliciting are a backlash from the Jonestown massacre. Hare Krishna members are somewhat defensive about being linked with cults, saying after all they belong to an Eastern religion. And they say reports of their joining Synanon, a more violent cult, are nonsense. In South Dade, Peter Dench, Channel 7 News.
Former will end up with the money if it's ever tracked down. Later on in the news, we'll have the first of a series of reports on the South Florida Coptic Church. Members of that religious cult claim marijuana is their holy sacrament.
One of a week-long series on one of Miami's cults, the Coptics.
Tragedy of Guyana still fresh in people's minds. We begin a week-long look tonight at one of Miami's cults, the Ethiopian Zion Coptic Church. Coptics have caused quite a stir recently since they consider the smoking of marijuana a sacrament. Mark Ludner reports.
Like Orthodox Jews, the men do not shave, nor do the men and women sit together in prayer.
Notwithstanding, she will be saved in childbearing if they continue in faith and charity. And
like
holiness.
Southern Baptists, they stress Bible reading. Like Catholics, they teach their children the importance of the communion offering. Like the Amish of Pennsylvania and the Middle West, the women dress modestly. But like nobody else, they focus their professed faith on the smoking of marijuana. It is shortly after 5 a.m. You and I might call that an ungodly hour, but members of the Ethiopian Zion Coptic Church say it is the first of many godly hours in their day. A day which, for most of them, will include only about 5 hours sleep. Who are they? Well, there's Brother Butch, who says he's the son of a well-to-do auto parts manufacturer. There's Brother Lance, who says he was an Army squad leader in Vietnam. There is Brother Love, who says he's the son of a prosperous New England businessman, a former computer firm executive, and now spokesman for the Miami Coptics. There is Brother Ed, who says he once dabbled in real estate near Chicago. There's Brother Robert, who says he drugged himself for 2 years on the streets of Haight-Ashbury before becoming a Coptic 6 years ago. There is also Brian. And David. And a collection of other children who have no backgrounds other than this. Their parents, for the most part, are remnants of the so-called lost generation of the 60s. No longer, however, does each do his own thing. Now, they all do the same thing. They say they all learned the same thing in Jamaica, where they became devotees of the Ganja people. Ganja meaning marijuana. And what they say they learned is a religion with roots in the centuries-old practice of Christianity and the centuries-old practice of marijuana smoking.
What is it that the people who come here have in common?
A desire for a spiritual fulfillment, a desire to find a genuine love, a desire for brotherhood.
Brother Love and I talked on the patio of the mansion, which serves as a house of worship for the Miami Coptics. The mansion is on Star Island in Biscayne Bay. In the driveway are testimonies to the prosperity of the Coptics, people who have quit their jobs. How do they support themselves? Brother Love won't say, except to discourse on the spiritual wealth of the church. He will say a lot about other things, though. And he will especially say a lot about homosexuality. The Coptics seem obsessed with the subject and share a collective attitude toward it that makes Anita Bryant look like a softie.
One of the tenets of the church is that we are in the midst of a homosexual mad society. It's everywhere. They're on the streets holding up signs saying we're homosexual lawyers, we're homosexual judges, we're homosexual informers. There seems to be no shame involved in it. The overall permissiveness of the society toward these sins of the flesh, the homosexuality, the adultery, the masturbation, the fornication, these are the most dangerous elements to the youth and the people of the world today. We of the Coptic Church, as individuals, have passed through the world. We've tasted of the evil tree. We've rejected the evil tree. We accept the Bible as our foundation, and we accept the ganja as our communion, and we reject the sodomy. We reject the adultery. We reject the fornication, the drugs, the bar rooms, the dog tracks, the gay bars. We reject all that and pray to live in peace with all our fellow men.
And what, you might ask, do the Coptics do all day besides smoke and pray? As far as we could see, not much of anything except talk.
Modern business. We're not surprised when we hear things are collapsing, you know.
And they talk all the time, usually about themselves, and the good life they live, and the evil life everyone else lives, and they talk to anyone who will listen. And when they talk to people like me, who tires quickly of hearing how good they are and how evil I am, they become instant and horrible bores.
So why, if they're such crashing bores, do they get so much play in the papers and on TV, you may very justifiably ask? They get the publicity simply because they practice what they say is their religion by doing something against the law, by smoking very substantial quantities of marijuana, and by having their children smoke substantial quantities of marijuana. Perhaps in sincere pursuit of religious convictions, perhaps not. They do something which would get the rest of us thrown into jail. They are newsworthy and they know it. More on the Coptic publicity machine and a talk with a recent convert tomorrow. I'm Mark Lundner.
And there was also other news of the pot-smoking group. 3 members of the Zion Coptic Church appeared at the Dade State Attorney's Office today. They were subpoenaed by prosecutor Hank Adorno. Coptics were called as part of an investigation into their activities. Those called were Miami sect leader Brother Love and Robert Cohen and Jacqueline Town.
3 over Cameron. That's it, a big day in sports. Back to you.
Tony, the state's attorney's office is continuing its questioning of 3 members of the marijuana-smoking Zion Coptic Church. This evening, there is still no indication any charges will be filed. Robin Lloyd has a report.
For 5 hours today, a team of state prosecutors grilled 3 members of the controversial Zion Coptic Church, asking them questions about their religion, about their use of marijuana, and about juveniles as church members. This first day of testimony is part of a full-scale investigation of the church's activities. The state attorney's office wants to know more about the Coptics' use of marijuana and why they consider it a holy sacrament. The spokesman for the group, Brother Love, said tonight it is a basic issue of religious freedom. He describes himself as a Christian being persecuted by the Romans.
The church has always through history been known as the lawgiver, and the state has always been known as the law administrator. Things are a bit out of focus in that regard because the state is claiming to have authority over the church.
Is the state claiming to have authority about whether or not you can smoke marijuana or not?
The state is confused. They are still saying that their position is that marijuana is a dangerous drug, and I totally disagree with that stand. Marijuana or ganja is a herb.
The state attorney's office has called on all 3 of the Coptic church members to testify again tomorrow, Brother Love, Robert Cohen, and Jacqueline Town. There has been no mention so far of any charges being filed against the church. Assistant State Attorney Hank Adorno has simply said he is looking into the hundreds of complaints authorities say they have received about the Coptics. Robin Lloyd, Channel 4 News.
More problems.
Narconon Drug Rehabilitation Center. 3 members of the Zion Coptic Church were at the Dade State Attorney's Office today. Those called included Miami sect leader Brother Love, Robert Cohen, and Jacqueline Town. The State Attorney's Office is investigating the Coptics who use marijuana. The Coptics say it's used as a sacrament.
The Phillies took the cue. They kept dickering with Rose, and this afternoon it paid off as he signed a 4-year contract.
Holiday super sale going on now.
The Coptic Church has been in the news quite often recently. One reason for the kind of coverage they've gotten is the church's well-organized publicity campaign. Tonight, the second segment of a week-long look at the Coptics with lifestyle reporter Mark Ludner.
See the tea I'm boiling? It grows on a hedge right outside this back kitchen door right here.
Like the rest of the Coptics, Brother Robert says he is an herbalist. Like the rest of the Coptics, he says he's renounced drugs. Why then does he smoke marijuana all the time? Because he and the rest of the Coptics say marijuana is not a drug, it is, they say, a God-given herb. And what has made the Coptics so controversial is their dedication to their God-given herb. They smoke all the time. Their children smoke an awful lot. All partake in what the Coptics insist is their holy sacrament, the communion they share in their devotion to God and the Bible. Now, back in the 60s, when most of the Coptics recall becoming alienated from conventional society, people who smoked a lot of marijuana thought it was a good idea to keep rather quiet about it, given the authorities and all that. Not the 1978 Coptics, though. They are determined to keep the world posted about themselves. For that purpose, they have a telex. They take out full-page newspaper ads.
This is Brother Love calling from the Coptic Church.
They pepper Miami news outlets with updates about themselves.
Okay, I just wanted to make you know that right now down at the Dade County Courthouse, our attorney is filing a registered replevant action, or whatever you call it.
The news usually concerns one of their legal battles. They follow themselves in the papers, and they read with interest any news about marijuana, even if they're not involved. And they diligently record all the television news about them on 2 videotape machines. Brother Love, the Coptic spokesman, says all the media consciousness is in self-defense. He says his group is being persecuted for its beliefs and must tell its side of the story.
You're not dealing with a bunch of little flunky blow-away druggies. We're not trying to get stoned. We're not encouraging anybody to get stoned. We're telling the people to be more godly in their life of living, to be more godly in their understanding of their own body, that everybody should, in a hurry, find out what sin is and avoid it at all costs. Long years we were here, and until the first thing appeared in the Miami Herald, nobody knew we were here. No one knew nothing about us, and our neighbors never said nothing like that about us.
All the publicity about the Coptics helped bring Tony Barron of Miami Beach into the Coptic fold.
A lot of the people here say they came after years of being lost. A lot of people who were your age maybe 10 years ago during the 60s. Were you lost? You don't seem to be lost.
I can't say I was really lost because I hadn't experienced a whole lot in the world, but one thing I said to myself before I ever came here was that I didn't want to have a 9-to-5 and be a routine job, office, whatever, you know. I wanted to just actually get enough money so I didn't have to do that and, you know, just go out and live on however I wanted to.
But why did he choose this?
Because I believe that, or I've come to know that this is the way that I want to live. It's a righteous life. They deal with the Bible. The things of the world I'm not so interested in anymore. You know, it's just...
How old are you?
18. I just turned 18.
So there we are, a collection of 60s-era dropouts who say they finally found themselves, and at least one child of the 70s who thinks he's found himself without first taking the time and trouble to lose himself. I'm neither an anthropologist, nor a sociologist, nor a psychologist, nor any other ologist. I don't know whether the Coptics will remain true to their professed tenets of love and brotherhood, or whether, like many Christian and Jewish groups of history, they will become violent or suicidal. This I do know, though, and this bothers me. The younger Coptics have no real choice in any of this. Children, like David, like Brian, smoke marijuana and tobacco while doing their lessons. They're kept out of regular schools. They watch their parents lead lives which do not include outside work. And what about this 11-year-old boy who comes in off the street after school and smokes with the Coptics? This boy and the boys and girls who are the Coptic children are the subjects of tomorrow's report. I'm Mark Lundner.
He put up for a vote this week. The body of a man was found at the controls of a light plane. The body has been identified as that of Ed Hammond, 29, of Miami. Hammond has been missing since November 23rd after he borrowed a friend's plane. Bales of marijuana were found in the bushes near the plane. 3 survivors of the
Relations with other countries will be affected by the manner in which those countries treat their own citizens. The occasion for the President's speech, a White House ceremony marking the 30th anniversary of the signing of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights at the United Nations. In a strong reaffirmation of his sometimes controversial human rights advocacy, the President declared today, "As long as I am President, the government of the United States will struggle for the enhancement of human rights. No force on earth can separate us from that commitment. Human rights is the soul of our foreign policy because human rights is the very soul of our sense of nationhood." End of quote. The President is also expressing the hope that the United States Senate this year will ratify the United Nations Treaty to ban genocide. He noted that America has no acceptable answer for having failed to ratify that pact since it was adopted by the rest of the world 30 years ago. The Florida Spotlight this noon is on Tallahassee. Joan Hall has that story. Joan?
Well, this just came in, Del. In Dade Circuit Court this morning, members of the Ethiopian Zion Coptic Church were granted a peaceful holiday season. Judge John Gordon warned police not to bother or harass the religious cult or make any raids at the Star Island residence. An order was given to attorneys for both the Coptics and the state attorney's office to submit written briefs, and another hearing will be held January 2nd.
Richard Schlesinger, Newswatch 10.
The ongoing feud between the controversial Zion Coptic Church on Miami Beach and the Dade State Attorney's Office has reached an impasse. A circuit court judge stopped assistant state attorneys from questioning church members on their use of marijuana as a religious sacrament, as well as other church-related practices. Attorneys for the Coptics told Newswatch this morning the questioning is merely a fishing expedition aimed at civil prosecution, not a criminal act.
For the state to subpoena someone, bring them from their home, drag them before 4 or 5 people to question them for an interminable length of time is repugnant, I believe, to our Constitution unless they're investigating a crime. They're here on a civil matter. They should use the rules of civil procedure.
A hearing to determine if further questioning of the Coptics will be permitted is set for next month. For the second day in a row, former state insurance...
But he wouldn't promise. Jim?
The Zion Coptic Church won a legal battle today, ensuring its members peace and quiet at least until after the holidays are over. Beverly McFarland has a report.
Today I met a man who told me that my kingdom was finished. His has been given a respite until after the new year. There is a 24-hour security guard at the gate of the Coptic mansion on Star Island. He keeps out the troublemakers and curiosity seekers. Inside, Brother Love, the spokesman for the Coptics, talked about the circuit court decision this morning that postpones any legal action against the Coptics until January 2nd.
Our attorneys have said that the state attorney is breaking the law by his tactics. I say the state attorney is very confused. He is still looking upon a herb that God made and saying that that constitutes a crime.
Today, Judge John Gordon declared there could be no legal interference with the Coptics' lifestyle. No more confiscating their marijuana plants, no more subpoenas about zoning violations until he reviews legal briefs from the state attorney and the Coptics' lawyers. The marijuana, a sacrament in the Coptic faith, is the problem. The constant smoking of large quantities of marijuana has focused attention on the Coptics. The mass suicides in Guyana distorted the public's perception of unusual religious groups. Brother Love says the glare of publicity should now turn towards rampant immorality in society outside the confines of the Coptic mansion. On January 2nd, the Coptics will find out in court if that society will allow them the freedom to create their own kingdom on Star Island. Beverly McFarland, Channel 4 News.
Taking a brief look at some of the stories to be covered.
The Soviet-American quest to curtail arms sales and reduce the threat of brush-fire wars currently is being pursued in Mexico City, the fourth such meeting between the world's two main arms suppliers. It's a pressing problem, but with no prospect of early solution, as Ike Pappas reports from Washington.
The Middle East War, 1973. Israeli weapons supplied by the United States down Syrian planes made in the Soviet Union. On Cyprus, in the Ogaden, in Zaire, and Nicaragua, wherever regional battles have broken out in recent years, they have been fought with guns, rockets, and tanks, conventional weapons, supplied mostly by the two superpowers. The United States, in fact, is the world's biggest arms merchant, with sales topping a record $13 billion a year to some 80 nations, selling everything from jet fighters to military housing. Russia is next, an estimated $6 billion worth yearly to about 25 nations. Second-line arms makers such as France, Britain, Poland, and Israel add billions of dollars to the totals. The result? Worldwide arms sales have nearly doubled in the past decade. In the past 2 years, the Carter administration, without waiting for the Russians to follow suit, has placed a ceiling on the sale of weapons to certain countries, the administration thus claiming that it is making an effort to reduce the worldwide proliferation of weapons. But critics claim the alleged cutbacks are only an illusion. The reason? The ceiling applies only to arms going to so-called non-favored nations, most of them third-world countries. But sales to Japan, the NATO allies, Australia, and New Zealand pass the all-time high, and pressures from big business to keep the sales going are mounting. More than 1,200 American companies are involved in the lucrative foreign arms trade, and each year, more of them are displaying their wares at industrial shows, some of which bring out vocal arms opponents.
These are weapons of slaughter. Do you feel any discomfort with that?
I do not feel any discomfort.
Lobbyists who represent the big corporations on Capitol Hill, however, argue that hundreds of thousands of jobs and billions for the American economy are at stake in the arms trade. If the United States turns down the business, they say, someone else will snap it up.
We think that world sales are going to increase, and I think there's evidence that that's true. The British, for example, have increased their sales. The French have increased their sales. The Japanese are even talking about making military sales to China.
The arms sales advocates argue that American influence overseas might fade if the self-imposed weapons ceiling remains while the Russians continue to sell arms unabated. Supporters of controls disagree.
The United States should not have, as its principal aspect of its foreign policy, the amount of arms that we sell in different parts of the world. That has been the case, and that has brought problems without influence. The classic example are the sale of arms to India and Pakistan and our inability to try and bring a halt to the conflict. It has been true in Turkey and Greece without being able to bring an end to the conflict.
The most the United States hopes to get out of the talks, and the Mexico City meeting is just one of a series, is the establishment of ground rules for arms sales. The hope is that eventually, perhaps in years, there will be an agreement on limiting the quality and quantity of the weapons shipped around the world. At this point, however, there is agreement on only one thing. Conventional arms sales may one day be controlled, but they will never end. Ike Pappas, CBS News, Washington.
Title IX of the Education Amendment
to the state has been stalled. State prosecutors won't be allowed to question members of the Miami Beach Zion Coptic Church until at least next year, if then. Attorneys for the marijuana-smoking religious sect claim the questioning of church members about their use of marijuana as a religious sacrament and other church practices amounts to a fishing expedition.
The state to subpoena someone, bring them from their home, drag them before 4 or 5 people to question them for an interminable length of time is repugnant, I believe, to our Constitution unless they're investigating a crime. They're here on a civil matter. They should use the rules of civil procedure.
Both sides will return to court next month to argue why the Coptics should or should not be questioned. Ann?
The law is also reported. Channel 7 News.
Wayne, the Coptic Church is waging a legal battle.
It involves an investigation by the state attorney's office, Richard. Brother Love of the Zion Coptic Church won't have to appear for questioning at the state attorney's office for at least a month. The state is investigating activities at the church, and Brother Love is trying to halt the state from giving him a subpoena.
I believe that the state is trying to bring someone in and question them on a civil matter. They say it's going toward an injunction and trying to use criminal process for the state to subpoena someone, bring them from their home, drag them before 4 or 5 people to question them for an interminable length of time is repugnant, I believe, to our Constitution unless they're investigating a crime. They're here on a civil matter. They should use the rules of civil procedure.
Dade Judge John Gordon said he would set a hearing date on the matter on January 2nd. Later in the news, lifestyle reporter Mark Lundner continues his series of reports on the Coptic Church. Richard?
A line of protests.
Big enough for 2, in solid colors or designer prints.
Tonight in part 3 of Channel 7's series on the Coptics, lifestyle reporter Mark Lundner takes a look at the Coptic children. They are the source of some controversy because, as their parents do, they too smoke the Coptic sacrament, marijuana.
While the living room decor is early San Francisco bordello, the scene at the Coptic Star Island Mansion is all love and innocence. They have some good-looking children, these Coptics, and those children occupy some of their time with the same activities as other kids. There are important differences, though. These children smoke marijuana, which the Coptics say is their holy sacrament, blended with tobacco. The girls dress in the hyper-modest manner of all the Coptic women, and both boys and girls are taught the world is an evil place, that everything out there is sinful, that beyond their small flock lies Babylon. The Coptic children are awakened every day for the first prayer service at 5 a.m. And at 5 in the morning, the Coptic children chant along with their parents and smoke along with their parents. They are taught early on that marijuana, or ganja as it's known in Jamaica, the place from which this sect sprang, is a God-given communion. Among other things, they also are taught that women exist in the Coptic faith to serve and be subservient to their men. The children, of course, do not go to school to learn all this. As a matter of fact, they don't go to school at all. School comes to them in the form of tutors, outside people whose attitudes are harmonious with the Coptics. Ironically, while their parents have renounced outside employment, the kids tote about their schoolwork in handsome attaché cases, those slim valises so symbolic of the rat race. David and Brian are 12 years old. For most of those years, they have been Coptic children, traveling with their parents between Miami and Jamaica, the Coptics' home office. The children are pale, but appear healthy otherwise. Chuck Bellman is their teacher. School lasts 12 hours a week.
The ganja puts the spirit in you to love your brothers and your sisters. It doesn't put hatred spirit into you. All they do out in Babylon school is fight and do things to one another, bad things.
And ganja brings you closer to God.
I don't know how anybody that doesn't smoke ganja, I don't know how they could feel good.
Is it fair to bring up little children who really have no choice in what they do? Is it fair to bring them up smoking marijuana and tobacco, yellowing their hands, perhaps hurting their health, when they have no choice in the matter?
Well, the thing is that they love it. What do you, when you say, is it fair? I think it's fair. I think it's right. I think it's good. It's love. It's the life that I want my children, you know, to be brought up in. And I do think it's fair.
What about their health, though?
Well, their health is good. They're healthy children.
It's a troublesome question. At what point, at what threshold of unconventional behavior do parents forfeit the right to bring up their children according to their beliefs? This youngster, though, is not one of the Coptic children. He's from Miami Beach, and he comes to the Coptic mansion after school. And when he comes, he smokes. And there are more like him.
How old are you?
I'm 14.
Mm-hmm. And what brings you out here?
Friends told me about it, and I like it a lot.
What'd the friends say?
That there was a Coptic church, and I never heard about it until I went here, and I experienced that it was real nice, you know.
What's nice about it?
Well, you learn prayers, you learn certain facts, you know, like what's going on.
What about the marijuana? Did that have any appeal for you at all?
No, not really.
What did your folks say when you told them you were coming here?
I didn't tell them.
Oh, how'd they find out?
Saw me.
What do you mean they saw you?
They saw me come here.
They tell you to stop?
Yes.
Well, what was it that is so important here that made you keep coming anyway?
I don't know. Prayers. I just like it here.
They will come here, and anyhow we discern that they are sincere, that they're not here just to come to get a quick smoke and run out the door, that they're not being disrespectful, that they're showing us the respect that they would show in anything they determine to be a church. We invite the young people in as our guests, yes. We don't solicit them. In all of our advertising, we've never mentioned our address or our telephone number, yet a young boy will come to our gate and say, I've heard great things of you. I've heard you possess wisdom. I've heard that you are a cool guy. I've heard you know something. I'd like to hear what you know.
Now, I know what you might be saying. If you TV people would quit talking about the Coptics, kids wouldn't go over there. To some degree, I'm sure you're right. But I think I'm right in making sure you know there are children being taught that smoking marijuana brings them closer to God. And I'm sure that watching marijuana cigarettes burn in little children's mouths burns many of you up. What, you might ask, is being done about all this? What, if anything, do the authorities really know about the Coptics? Vic Walter has been digging into those questions and will have some answers tomorrow. I'm Mark Lundner.
3 days after we filmed at the Coptic Church, Brother Love, the Coptics' unofficial spokesman, announced that no one under 18 would be allowed to visit the Coptics unless accompanied by their parents.
The Dade State Attorney's Office today suspended its interrogation of Zion Coptic Church leader, Brother Love, said any black student who passes the school's admissions test will be accepted at Dade Christian. He also told us of the school's 67 teachers, 2 are Latin, none is black. The Dade State Attorney's Office today suspended its interrogation of Zion Coptic Church leader, Brother Love, until a court ruling on the legality of the probe is determined. Gene T. Bloom reports.
3 Zion Coptic Church members appeared before the State Attorney's Office on Monday. They were subpoenaed to answer questions about marijuana smoking and other Coptic Church activities. Dade Circuit Court Judge John Gordon today heard attorneys for the Coptics argue about the constitutionality of that investigation.
Well, I believe that the subpoena was overbroad. I believe that the state is trying to bring someone in and question them on a civil matter. They say it's going toward an injunction and trying to use criminal process for the state to subpoena someone, bring them from their home, drag them before 4 or 5 people to question them for an interminable length of time is repugnant.
Judge Gordon ordered attorneys for the state and the Coptics to submit briefs on the matter before the Coptic investigation can continue. The State Attorney's Office will submit its written brief by 5 p.m. Friday. Attorneys for the Zion Coptic Church will respond a week later. Judge Gordon said he'll study the briefs during the last 2 weeks of the year on his vacation, then set a hearing date the first week of next month. Gene T. Bloom for the TV6 10 o'clock news.
The Dade County Marine Patrol arrested 2 men in Sunny Isles today whose 25-foot cabin cruiser was allegedly carrying 2,000 pounds of pot. Gloria Albino reports on that.
Marine patrol officers attempted to stop the 2 men from driving their van, which was pulling the cabin cruiser away from the haul-over boat ramp on Collins Avenue. The boat appeared to them to be improperly loaded and not strapped down as required by law. When the men fled, land units were called and they were apprehended. To their surprise, police found the boat's hold loaded with a ton of marijuana with a street value of $750,000. 41-year-old Felipe Rodriguez and 38-year-old Ronaldo Lozano, both of Miami, were arrested and charged with possession of marijuana with intent to distribute. Gloria Albino for the TV6 10 o'clock news. And for the TV6 10 o'clock news.
And earlier this evening, the Coast Guard seized a 150-foot coastal freighter as a stateless vessel 20 miles northeast of Miami, carrying at least 25 tons of marijuana. Initially, the 13 Colombian crewmen aboard claimed their ship had British registration, but when that didn't pan out, the Coast Guard boarded the vessel, discovered the contraband cargo. In a San Francisco courtroom today, former Supervisor Dan White was arraigned for the November 27th murders of Mayor George Moscone and
Felipe Rodriguez and Ronaldo Lozano. Tonight, crew members of the Coast Guard cutter Diligence boarded a freighter 20 miles northeast of Miami. On board, they found at least 25 tons of marijuana worth an estimated $15 million on the street. The 13 Colombian crewmen on board have been arrested. The freighter was flying a British flag, but no registration papers were found. It was seized after the State Department declared it a stateless vessel. During the second day of testimony from former state official Tom O'Malley, he delivered
for your money.
Chance of accidents. In the past 25 years in the United States,
attorneys for the marijuana-smoking religious sect charge the questioning of members about their use of marijuana as a religious sacrament and other church practices was not a criminal case but a civil case and should be handled like one. However, both sides return to court next month to pick up the argument again. Most recent reports indicate as many as
there's all around pattern and style of play, and I haven't done that up until now.
The Oakland game on Sunday may wind up being sold out, but
For a call to a Star Island home tonight, which houses members of the Zion Coptic Church. Police left the scene as soon as our Channel 7 news unit arrived, but security was beefed up at the complex. Sect leader Brother Love said he received a threatening phone call as a result of a series of special reports on the Coptics carried on our 6 p.m. news.
early this evening, we received a phone call from a distraught woman saying her husband had seen something on television that might have led him to an act of violence. The something he saw concerned marijuana. Marijuana and violence should not be connected. There have been some things on Channel 7 TV. Last night, Mr. Laudner said he did not know whether or not we would become violent or suicidal. This evening, Mr. Richard Whitcomb implied that he did not know whether we might represent a potential human sacrifice. My argument is the sacrifice has already been made. Christ already died for sinners. There's no more need for that.
Members of the Coptic Church say they use marijuana as a sacrament in their religious worships.
For his fourth day Friday, it's now clear this trial will not end until next week. Frank Lynn, Newswatch 10 at Miami Federal Court.
The Florida Supreme Court says bare suspicion alone does not give a police officer grounds for a search without a warrant. The case involves a Miami man, Jack Mullins, who was riding a bicycle through a residential area at 3 in the morning. A police officer stopped Mullins, smelled marijuana, and after searching him, found a small bag of marijuana in Mullins' shirt pocket. The Florida Supreme Court says the police stopped Mullins and searched him illegally. Dwight?
And the New York stock market closed nearly 6 points lower
at the federal courthouse.
Carmel, we have a strange case of a missing boy tonight.
A religious cult may be involved, Wayne. A Southwest Dade couple believes their 16-year-old son is being held against his will by a group called the Family of Christ. They believe the boy, Arthur DeMario, fell under the cult's power when he ran away from home 9 days ago.
A friend who ran away with DeMario said the two stayed with the Christ family here in an avocado garden near South Dade Utilities. We went into that grove with the DeMario family and their investigators and found plenty of avocados, refuse left behind by the Christ family, but none of its members dressed only in white robes. Arthur DeMario ran away after a disagreement about his marijuana smoking, but his mother says he would have called home.
I'm desperate because I feel my son would have called me if he, by now, this is not the kind of life he would want. I know he liked smoking the marijuana, but he would never go for that kind of life.
Members of the Christ family are nomads who live between Coconut Grove and areas like this rock pit in Perrine and the nearby Avocado Grove. 19 of its members pleaded guilty this week to disorderly conduct. And back at the DeMario home, young Arthur's father said he learned his son was afraid to leave the group.
He was afraid to make a phone call. He was afraid to leave the camp. And towards the end, he cried, and he mentioned this to this other boy, that he was in fear for his life, and if he did come back, he was afraid they would do something to the family.
A police investigator who interviewed members of the Christ family who often sleep in groves like these reportedly believes there's been no violence. In fact, the Christ family's motto is no sex, no violence, no materialism. Meanwhile, a juvenile judge has ordered authorities to pick up the young runaway for a court hearing. But authorities have no idea how long that will take. Peter Dench, Channel 7 News.
Well, they finally stopped pacing the floor at Crandon Park Zoo today.
The Treasury brings you Christmas gift savings.
Some people are outraged that the Coptic Church on Star Island can continue to use its illegal sacrament, marijuana, while law enforcement officials do nothing about it. Tonight, reporter Vic Walter looks into some of the continuing investigations into the Coptic Church and some of the group's legal problems.
Members of the Zion Coptic Church at 43 Star Island on Miami Beach smoke marijuana, or ganja as they call it, 7 days a week around the clock. They even invite outsiders to their home to partake in smoking the illegal weed. In their backyard, they have cultivated several marijuana plants. The Coptics have been doing this openly for nearly 3 years, and during that time, only one police raid has been made on their so-called church. The Miami Beach Police Department obtained a search warrant and raided the Coptics' home in February. They confiscated $91,000 in cash, but found no marijuana. They have not been back and refused to discuss the matter, saying their investigation is continuing. A recent attempt to infiltrate the Coptic Church also failed when a man planted inside the church by the Miami Beach Police Department confessed to Coptic leader Brother Love that he was an informant.
Yours to Venus, sir. This bids you to be at the State Attorney's Office Monday, December the 4th at 6 o'clock in the evening. To see Mr.
Last Friday, the Dade State Attorney's Office served several members of the church with subpoenas. A few days later, the Coptics were questioned about their use of marijuana at 43 Star Island. Other than to say an investigation is underway, the State Attorney's Office has no other comment. The U.S. Customs Service billed the Coptics in March of this year for over $15 million. A penalty for possession of marijuana with the intent to distribute. The bill referred to nearly 20 tons of marijuana, which police confiscated in a Central Florida raid 10 months ago. Police say the pot belongs to alleged members of the church. The case is still pending, and the Customs Service says it will not comment further. But while the authorities refuse to discuss the Coptics, court documents indicate a belief that the cult members are involved in marijuana smuggling. On November 29, 1977, and on February 2nd of this year, law enforcement officials in Central Florida arrested several persons police say are members of the Coptic Church. The two raids netted a total of 33 tons of marijuana, and the Coptic Church posted over $1 million in bond for those arrested. But the church refuses to confirm if those arrested are, in fact, members of the Coptic organization. And in charges filed by the Internal Revenue Service against the Coptic Church, the government alleges the large number of church members who have been arrested on numerous occasions, along with other church members in marijuana activities, establishes that the church is involved in marijuana smuggling operations. For some 2 years now, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, along with other police agencies, have conducted investigations of the Coptics, while the Coptics continue to openly smoke and grow marijuana at their Miami Beach home with apparent impunity. And Coptic leader Brother Love says not all the marijuana or ganja that is smoked each day comes from 43 Star Island.
Now, certain legal brains will say Star Island is only so big, so it doesn't look like they could... I'm not going to try to tell you that everything I smoke, I grow at this address. I'm telling you that ganja is a gift of God to man. It is planted, whether it's planted in Mexico, Colombia, Jamaica, Thailand, Star Island.
Well, how do you get
your
it here?
backyard.
But how do you get it here? That's what I'm asking.
I was explaining it to you. It is a herb that grows anywhere there is earth.
To go out and specifically follow up on the cameras and go into a house and arrest people who are alleged to be smoking marijuana is not a practical approach to the thing, because we're only going to get a small number of people, and that's not going to lead us to the importers. That's not going to get us the information that we need to cut off the supply of drugs coming in.
So what you're saying is you're really not interested with the Coptics and their pot smoking on Star Island. You're interested in the other aspects of maybe their operation.
The international aspects of it, that's correct. Trying to stop it before it gets there. And I can assure you that is under investigation and has been.
I'm trying work to do.
The 24 or so people who live at 43 Star Island don't seem to find any difficulty in quickly replenishing their supply of marijuana. But marijuana costs money. So does the mansion in which these people live, and the cars they drive, the boats they own, and several property holdings they have acquired.
I've got a doctrine, man. You're going on like an investigator.
Well, you won't tell me where you get your money. Is that what you're saying?
Of course not.
Tomorrow night, more on the Coptics. I'm Vic Walter reporting for Channel 7 News.
There's no such thing as the average family. I buy my meat at Publix because they understand that. Sure, they have good beef, but Publix doesn't stop there. They know I expect plenty of choice when it comes to poultry, pork, ham, veal, lamb, and all the other things my family likes. Publix gives me the variety I want. They know I mean business.
Publix, the place for beef.
A store full of Christmas.
Fort Lauderdale, heavily armed Coast Guardsmen have been ordered to board this 50-foot sloop. It's the China Doll out of Wilmington, Delaware. Reason for the caution, the Colombian connection. An annual $6 billion worth of marijuana flowing between South America and Florida. An industry that has been known to convert graceful sloops into pot-hauling freighters. After searching the vessel, the Coast Guard's suspicions are confirmed.
It is marijuana, over.
The China Doll's cabin is crammed with 6 tons of high-grade marijuana. Estimated street value over $4 million.
Place them under arrest. Seize the vessel, the contraband, and all equipment aboard, over.
The 4-man crew, offering no resistance, is taken aboard the cutter, frisked, and placed under armed guard. With the China Doll in tow, the Coast Guardsmen and their catch sail for Miami. The China Doll is one of 100 pot boats seized in the South Atlantic and Caribbean this year, but hundreds more have managed to slip through these waters to the Florida coast. This year, more than 20 million pounds of marijuana have been smuggled into the United States, most by boat and air. Nearly all of it is Colombian grown.
I don't know of any time in the history of the United States when a state has had as its leading industry a criminal activity. Why rob a bank when you have these huge profits to be made and a relatively low risk of being caught, number one, and of being prosecuted, secondly, and thirdly, of serving any time after your conviction?
The government's attempts to curb the endless flow of dope into South Florida can be as frustrating as they are costly. For instance, while their boat and cargo were seized, the crew of the China Doll was set free soon after docking in Miami Beach. Although the Coast Guard has the power to board U.S. vessels on the high seas, mere possession of marijuana is not considered a crime. Only intent to import it is. In this case, the Coast Guard couldn't prove that intention. A handful of cutters like this one help stop only about 10% of the dope traffic entering the United States. The laws governing search and seizure at sea have been called a shark-infested problem by a federal judge. But the Coast Guard hopes at least that pending legislation in Congress will soon make arrests like the China dolls stand up in court. Bob Serkin, ABC News, off South Florida.
In New York, 1,300 pounds of marijuana being held as evidence for future court cases is missing. It was being stored in a heavily guarded government warehouse, and police said today the theft may have been an inside job. Value of the marijuana? $400,000.
On some of the group's questionable business dealings.
Members of the Coptic Church do not wear expensive clothes or eat expensive foods, but they do own several late-model automobiles, a number of boats, and live in a house purchased in 1975 for $270,000. Recently, the title to the Miami Beach mansion was transferred to Accredited Surety and Casualty Company Incorporated and Schaefer Bonding Service. I have learned that the State Insurance Commissioner's Office is investigating Schaefer Bonding Service. Schaefer had provided over $1 million in bonds for alleged members of the Coptic Church arrested for possessing 33 tons of marijuana. The arrest took place in 2 separate raids in Central Florida. Sources say state investigators are checking to see if Schaefer Bonding Service posted those bonds in accordance with the law. The deed to 43 Star Island was put up as collateral for the bonds, but the house is still said to belong to this woman, identified as Coptic Church member Jacqueline Renee Town. Records show she bought the house in 1976 from fellow church member Peter Sheets for $270,000, the same amount he paid for the home a year earlier. In 1975, Sheets paid off the mortgage on the house in 2 months with cash. According to the Internal Revenue Service, members of the Coptic Church owe the government over $3 million in back taxes on everything from the fleet of cars they drive to several property holdings, including this house located at 6724 Southwest 12th Street. Several members of the Coptic Church are reported to live in the house, which is guarded by iron bars. Due to the large number of assets the Coptic Church is said to have, and because of the lifestyle they lead, they have drawn the attention of several local, state, and federal agencies. Investigators from the State Department of Health and Rehabilitative Services are in the process of determining if Coptic members abuse their children by having them smoke a mixture of tobacco and marijuana. The small children really have no choice in whether they smoke or not. They are taught that marijuana must be smoked in order to lead a holy life. At least one psychiatrist says the marijuana smoking could really harm the children.
My opinion is that the misuse of marijuana or the application of marijuana to children is a form of child abuse, especially against their will. Children can't really make good judgment in that area anyway. But the marijuana having the effect it does on the brain, of course, in children must cause damage to that child in his development, his growth into an adult. Anything that would interfere with a child's development and growth, anything which would interfere with his normal development and growth has to be a form of abuse.
Well, the first thing that needs to be done is a very vigorous investigation of all of the possible violations of law, not least of which could be impairing the morals of minors, because minor children are reported to be involved in going in and out of the 43 Star Island address and being involved possibly with drugs.
Many parents point to what they call the brainwashing techniques of the Coptics. The little sleep, the chanting, the smoking of marijuana. The parents of this 17-year-old Miami Beach High School student became so alarmed at their son's involvement with the Coptics, they hired a professional deprogrammer to reclaim their son from the cult. But Michael Arison's deprogramming was unsuccessful, and he is said to still have serious mental problems. So, where do we stand with the Coptics who live here at 43 Star Island on Miami Beach? The Coptics continue to smoke and grow marijuana here at their so-called church in open defiance of the law. In addition, they admit that they cannot grow enough of the illegal weed here on the island to meet their daily needs. So what are law enforcement officials doing? They say they are investigating. The fact is, the Coptics have money, apparently lots of money. Enough to hire the best lawyers to ensure that they remain here doing what they've been doing since 1975. It's a situation which continues to exist in spite of a public outcry of disgust. I'm Vic Wolfer reporting for Channel 7 News.